Hello, YouTubers, music lovers, and both. It is time to look at another Swedish dance band album that is well worth having, maybe even worth listening to among the many active dance band haters in this country. This is the fifth video, and the last that I have planned, but if there by any case would be an interest to more of these, then I may consider it sometime in the future. There are more great dance band albums out there, even though you have to look for them actively to find them. The record that I'm going to look at now is an album that was released when the dance band music was selling horribly after some great years in the mid-70s. It was the so-called dance band death. Despite that there was some interesting albums made, in many cases it was about the dance bands trying to upgrade their styles and update their material and to sound more modern and to be able to compete with younger new wave bands and disco bands that were starting to get most of the attention of the youth. That was, of course, before most of the dance bands decided, well, to hell with the youth. Let's aim for a mature audience. In fact, the same audience that were young at the same time as we were. And hey presto, they changed their disco outfits and platform shoes and started using white tuxedos with light blue bow ties instead. That would happen a couple of years later though. By 1980, many bands were still struggling to find the right style. And the band Thorleifs from Norrhult is one of those bands. And this is the record I'm going to talk about. It looks like this. Thorleifs was a band from the town Norrhult in Småland. They were founded as early as 1962 by a group of young, keen boys. But it was in the early 70s that when they had their big breakthrough as a dance band, making their first album in 1973. Their second album gave them already their first gold record. And the 1975, and the third album, they had their big hit, Gråt inga tårar, in 1975. That was a song that later was named the dance band song of the 20th century. Like Ingmar Nordström's and many other bands, they had a saxophone-based sound with two saxophones with rhythm, like guitar, bass, drums and keyboards. And they had the same lineup for over 20 years, between 1970 to 1991. And the band consisted of the leader, vocalist, saxophonist, lead guitar player and songwriter Thorleif Torstensson. Remember that name? I'll be talking about him quite a lot today. Here he is. There. The keyboardist and guitarist and saxophone player Hasse Magnusson. He's there. And they were from the very beginning, I think, from 1962 and on. The guitarist and the vocalist Magnus Bissebergdahl, that's that tall guy. He passed away, alas, a year ago or so. And the keyboardist Johan Möller, bass player Kim Lindahl, that's that guy, and finally vocalist and drummer Jörgen Löfstedt. There's a guy near the brown knitted sweater there. They had three very different singers in Torstensson, Bergdahl and Löfstedt with very different voices. Thorleif Torstensson having a high tenor voice, Bisse Bergdahl the deep baritone voice, and Jörgen Löfstedt a more hoarser, rocker voice, placed somewhere, well, in between of the other voices. So when they blended their voices, they got a very particular vocal sound. And as I said, they had some very successful years in the mid-1970s, and like many other successful dance bands, they started their own record label, Thor Gramophone, in 1975. And that didn't just record their albums, but other popular artists as well, and, well, other dance bands as well. In the late 1970s, they cooperated with a highly regarded rock producer, Anders Henkan Henriksson, that helped them developing their sound so their albums would sound very up to date, and well, they did. The problem was that they were affected by the dance band death in the late 1970s as well, and their albums didn't sell as well as they used to. But when this album from 1980, När Dina Ögon Ler, was recorded, they had quit the cooperation with Anders Henriksson, but his influence was still very apparent when they presented a very polished modern pop sound, not unlike the sound presented by younger, more modern, popular pop groups like Snowstorm and Gyllene Tider with Per Gessle, future Roxette fame, and, well, some others. Factory was also a very popular pop group in Sweden back then. The album is well made and a very ambitious attempt to keep both the old audience from the 70s, but also appeal to the younger people, but didn't go that well, and the album didn't sell that good. It was a dance band death. To be honest, it didn't help that it had one of the most boring record sleeves ever made, with the band standing at the edge of a fir forest in their everyday clothes. They would work harder on their album covers in the future, but this is probably the most boring album cover they ever had on any album. Anyway, the album was recorded at Studio Starek in Växjö, not far from the town where the group came from. And the band leader, Thorleifs Torstensson, was the producer and the man with the ideas to get a good sound. He also composed 5 of the 12 tracks, and the album had the normal dance band album mix of some original songs, some covers of current pop hits, and some oldies from the past. The album starts with a real up-tempo, new age-inspired disco tune composed by Thorleifs Torstensson, Stor I orden. And it could just have been taken from an album with Gyllene Tider or Snowstorm or Factor or any of the younger pop bands of that time. An indication that Thorleifs wanted to show that they knew what the younger audience would like. Today I can say that the song is totally correct in style and fits the ideas that Thorleifs Torstensson wanted to accomplish, but still the youth preferred the bands that were closer to their own age and not some 30-plus geezers. Many dance bands recorded songs by the political singer and songwriter Björn Afzelius in the early 80s, and I think Thorleifs was one of the first bands who did that. And they presented a cover of his song Så vill jag bli, originally recorded on the Björn Afzelius album För kung och fosterland from 1976. The dance bands usually avoided the songs who had very political lyrics and were more keen on recording covers of the more general love songs, and this is an example of that. Thorleifs shows some very good harmonizing on this track. After that, it's time for a cover of the Bellamy Brothers song Making Music Mama, recorded by them a year before. Okay, not one of the most famous Bellamy Brothers songs, and also not the most obvious song to cover by a dance band, but Bisse Bergdahl delivers the vocals in a version that is fairly close to the original. They continue on the country track by presenting a Swedish cover of the Crystal Gale song I'll Get Over You, and Thorleif himself takes the lead vocals, having the high voice that may be closest to Crystal Gale's steady alto voice, well, in this band anyway. The A-side closes with 2 originals by Thorleifs Torstensson. Again, they have a more modern sound. First the up-tempo song Ge mig, and then the very urban night pop song Då tar oss natten.
Ge mig en chans, ge mig ett under.
It is obvious that Thorleifs had no problems finding old songs to cover to represent the popular songs of the past, but the new original songs, they really wanted to sound new and original, and they did. Today they sound very 1980, well, for obvious reasons. The album is from 1980, so yeah. The B-side starts with another Thorleif Torstensson original song, but now we find Thorleif sounding more as we usually hear them sound, as soft love songs with saxophone, choirs, and mellow harmony vocals with Thorleif Torstensson's high tenor at the top. It's a title track, När Dina Ögon Ler, when your eyes are smiling. Maybe they had an idea to get a new hit in the same style as Gråtinga tårar, and that's an understandable thought since they had at least one song in the same style on each album that they had released since then.
När dina ögon ler känns allt varmare.
Anyway, after the title track, it's time for an oldie. Connie Francis' old hit Lollipop Lips, Lolly, Lolly, Lollipop Lips, actually more known in Scandinavia through the cover version made by the Danish boy band. We really accept the boy band because they were boys, the Lollipops, but never mind. It's a straightforward rocker that blows away the overly sweetness from the previous track. And next is another original by Thorleif Torstensson, the somewhat Greek-sounding ballad Jag vet vi vill, or Shall I Be a Bit Evil? And note that Mr. T, no, not from the 80s, Thorleif Torstensson had been quite inspired by ABBA's Chiquitita and perhaps Fernando when he composed this song. Say no more, nudge, nudge. Another oldie then. A Swedish version of the old hillbilly song I'm a Fool to Care, originally recorded in 1940 by Ted, I'm not sure about the pronunciation here, Ted Daffens or Ted Daffens Texans. This is one of the few songs from this album that Thorleifs kept on the repertoire for a longer time. It's a straightforward old-fashioned country song presented in a moderately traditional style, with some fairly soulful vocals by the drummer Jörgen Löfstedt. The album closes with two covers of current pop hits. First, a Swedish version of the song Here Comes That Lovely Feeling Again. Today is a rather forgotten one-hit wonder by the, my guess, German band Carrots. I don't know how much of an international hit it was, but many Swedish dance bands recorded the Swedish version of the song. When researching for this video, I was well familiar with this song because I've heard it in so many Swedish different versions, but not with the band Carrots. I can't find any upload of it, so I haven't heard it. I've just seen an image of it on Discogs. Right. The final song, the tear-jerking, and it's really a sad tear-jerking ballad, Just When I Needed You Most, is one of these songs that you often hear even nowadays in movies and on the radio. But who sang it originally, though? Well, even if many know the songs, not many know the name of the songwriter and the artist who originally made it. Well, since it was one of these songs, or those songs that loads of artists have recorded during the years. But it was written and recorded by Randy Van Warmer, not sure, Van Warmer, back in 1979, though, covered by many artists, and so it is a nice album closer, so to speak, and Thorleifs recorded it. I know that the Swedish answer to Jim Reeves, Gunnar Wiklund, recorded it also for his last LP in 1980. Yeah, it's a great but very sad song, very emotional. Anyway, Thorleifs 80s started promising with this album, but when it failed to grab the attention of the youth, they decided to continue to play for a more mature audience, and they gave up on the new age ideas and new age style pop, blah blah blah. After this album, they were struggling a bit to get any hits in the 80s, but at the end of the decade, they started finding the right songs again, and the 1990s would become a very successful decade when almost everything Thorleif recorded became some sort of popular hit. The 2000s were a bit calmer, and in 2012, when they celebrated their 50th anniversary, they decided to quit and disband and so on. And I mean, it's all right. 50 years. That's quite a long time to play. Yeah. This album, my thoughts, it's not available on CD, but it is today available on Google Play, Spotify, and iTunes. My grandparents had this album in their collection, but I don't think they listened to it that often, since I can imagine that the sound was a bit too modern for their taste. They might have expected an album that sounded like they had done a couple of years later, earlier, and well, later too, but they couldn't look into the future, could they? Sometimes when you make mistakes, it turns out right in the end. Yeah. But I think they were scared off by the first rocking disco track Storjorden of his album. Anyway, I was young when I heard it sometime during the first half of the 1980s. I enjoyed it. But today I still think that it was strange that a band put so much effort into creating a well-sounding modern album and didn't bother at all when thinking of ideas for the very amateurishly looking album cover. Well, I guess some questions will never get any answers. Well, and that's it for now. Thank you for watching. It is obvious that I almost said the Beatles. I'm ashamed.